Good day everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's Londononion here with a Back 4 Blood weapons review, and in this review we're going to be looking at our third shotgun, the Super 90. Now, as part of today's discussion, we're going to be including my proposed weapon-centered deck build following the review. Now, although the stats and specs of the weapon speak for themselves, I will be giving my evaluation on the weapon's capabilities in combat. This will involve tactics that suit the weapon's strengths, and an overall score. Now, evaluation will take place on 4 main fronts: ammunition economy, crowd control, pressure combat, and mutation deterrence. Before we get started, it is important to note that a weapon's shortcomings can be supplemented with one's card selection, but evaluation will mainly be geared toward the weapon's base attributes. Additionally, one's character choice can make a weapon somewhat more forgiving, meanwhile difficulty selection can accentuate or soften the downsides. So starting off with the Super 90's ammunition economy, which is essentially how long a weapon can practically last throughout a given level, the Super 90 is a semi-automatic weapon that holds an ammo capacity of 6 rounds. Differing from the traditional shotgun, the fire rate of this weapon is essentially at the mercy of one's trigger finger, which still provides a versatile and high level of control. Compounding with this, the spread is large enough to hit multiple targets, but tight enough to be used effectively up to mid-range against Ridden, even to the point of performing successful headshots. Using the Super 90 outside of these purposes, however, is a squander. Even without aiming down the sights, the weapon can still be reliably used. The recoil is essentially negligible, even with maximized fire patterns, requiring very little adjustment. At the same time, a major downside to the Super 90 is, well, the effective range. For maximum effectiveness, one must be 2 meters or closer. Outside of that, and the numbers begin to recede. Against Ridden, this is not an issue. Health-enhancing corruption cards also don't have too much of an effect. Mutations, however, will require much more ammunition, especially if trying to stay out of the danger zone, which I arbitrarily consider to be 10 meters and below. And this is where damage is almost guaranteed. Moving on to crowd control. Depending on one's corruption cards and main events in a given stage, crowd control will be more or less an important constituent in one's survival. Higher difficulties will likely create a greater need for effective crowd control. The Super 90 has some efficacy in dealing with crowds. As a shotgun, the damage is naturally quite high against common Ridden, and although the penetration is rather low, close-knit or perpendicular targets can be eliminated with a single shot. The main detractor for this weapon during crowd control is the magazine capacity. Especially as a semi-automatic / non-pump action shotgun, running out of ammo will come very quickly if one is not careful with their shots, or if the volume is simply too high. With this in mind, starting crowd control from mid-range, if one can help it, is a worthwhile tactic to pick off some numbers before becoming overwhelmed, since the Super 90 is capable of performing critical shots beyond close range. As a small strategy that can be employed in emergency circumstances, since the Super 90 does not require a pump action, shells can be loaded and triggered faster than all other shotguns. So even with depleted ammo, reloading a single shell and firing is a viable option if the circumstances demand it. Otherwise, the fire rate is at the mercy of one's trigger finger, though there is technically a cap. The mobility is high, allowing crowd control on the move to be an easy tactic, and the hip fire reliability only maximizes one's ability to remain quick and flexible when using this weapon. Moving on to pressure combat, as I coined the term, this refers to how efficiently a weapon can eliminate targets in multiple areas, or how well a weapon can complement one's ability to engage and eliminate multiple scattered targets at varying ranges. Now, the Super 90 is capable of close to mid-range shooting. Attachments only enhance its performance, though the reliability is not 100%. The semi-automatic feature of this weapon is what allows it to perform pressure combat with ease. The main downside is again the ammo capacity, which depending on pressure can be a detriment. But as long as one takes every opportunity to partially or fully reload the weapon, this should not be a major issue. Additionally, with high mobility, having to fire while on a back pedal or pushing forward is no difficult feat for the Super 90. Mid-range is an option, though close range is the best surefire way of maximizing elimination. As for Mutation Deterrence, the Super 90 will experience some difficulty. The damage is not the issue, but instead, ammo capacity and effective range. Against Ridden, one can get away with mid-range shooting. Against Mutations, however, shooting at mid-range will still register damage, but the process will take much longer. Close range, however, for this weapon can prove to be dangerous. The perk of the Super 90 is its ability to disseminate its shells quickly, which is a positive, and it does have some ability to stumble mutations. Chances are, however, one is much more likely to sustain damage during this process. With this in mind, I would argue that the Super 90 is both a kiting and fighting weapon. Kiting would be reserved for tall boy variants. Meanwhile, fighting tactics can reliably be used against other mutations. Moving on to the scoring, the Super 90's ammo economy is in the ideal range. The controllability of the weapon is versatile, but 100% in the wielder's control. The ammo capacity is not a burden on ammo reserves, and the shot-to-kill reliability is rather high. So I give it a 4 out of 5. Crowd control is an area of mediocre performance. It has some ability to tackle crowds, but a crowd too large will easily overwhelm the weapon, given its ammo capacity. However, having to be mobile and effective with the Super 90 comes with ease. The penetration is unfortunately low, but with the volume of pellets, if targets are close enough, it is still capable of eliminating more than one per round. The main downside here is that reloading will be frequent, taking away from its efficiency. So I give it a 3 out of 5. Pressure combat and mutation deterrence are areas of decent performance. With versatile fire, close to mid-range capability, and shot-to-kill reliability, pressure combat is not too burdensome for the Super 90. The frequent reloading, however, plays against it significantly. As for mutations, the Super 90 is a hard hitter, but like all other shotguns is best at close range, which can prove to be dangerous. Firing speed and damage may allow one to fight their way through certain mutations. Others, however, are best kept at mid-range at the sacrifice of more ammo. So I give it collectively a 6 out of 10. Overall, this puts the weapon at a 13 out of 20. Now that concludes the review, but we will now transition into our deck build for this weapon. Now, generally I would say there are two aspects of building a weapon/weapon class specific deck. There is the more strengths-based build, and the compensatory/balancing build. A third option would naturally be a hybrid, which is probably the most reasonable, but every weapon is different and has its own strengths and areas of need, to varying degrees. Now with this in mind, on a smaller scale I will categorize potential card selections into 4 designations: related, compensatory, synergistic, and preferential. Although Back 4 Blood already has its own designations for cards, I prefer to use my own. And before we get started, it is important to note that there are 1,000 ways to build a deck. The most I can do is showcase how I prefer to optimize this weapon's performance. So starting off with the related cards. Related cards are the ones that directly impact/buff the attributes or effects of a given weapon/weapon class. The cards in this category are Buckshot Bruiser, Scattergun Skills, Shell Carrier, and Rolling Thunder. Buckshot Bruiser grants a quarter unit of health for every pellet that connects to a target. Scattergun Skills grants a reload buff of 40% for shotguns. Shell Carrier grants a 10% boost in damage and 30% in ammo capacity. And Rolling Thunder increases movement speed while firing by 35% and damage by 10%. Personally, I find each of the cards described can only benefit the weapon without being a waste of space. Increased damage helps the economy, movement speed benefits kiting ability, and reload speed makes the frequent reload less cumbersome. So I choose to employ all related cards. Now moving on to the compensatory cards. Compensatory cards are meant to counteract the weapon's main weaknesses, or balance out its areas of need. In the Super 90's case, according to its stats, the effective range and accuracy are the only areas of need. However, as a shotgun, the spread is meant to be a benefit to an extent, so tightening the crosshairs is not high on my priority list. The range effectiveness is not as bad as it may look, but increasing it will only help the damage output of this weapon should mid-range shooting be more of a need. To help tackle this, I choose to employ silver bullets, which increases damage by 10% and effective range by 15%. Outside of the stats, the greatest priority is the ammo capacity. However, there is only one card to address this, and that is Power Reload. Personally, I prefer to avoid this card since it will only grant an additional 2 rounds. So the next best way I prefer to compensate for low ammo capacity is by increasing reload speed. The only card I choose to employ here is Mag Coupler, which increases reload speed by 50%, but comes with a penalty of disabling aiming down your sights. Naturally, this will hamper its accuracy by forcing hipfire. So to counteract the effects of Mag Coupler, I employ Quick Kill, which increases accuracy by 50% and comes with the same penalty. Overall, this will grant a 90% buff to reload speed and will only stack with whatever attachments one may find. Moving on to the Synergistic Cards, these are cards that have impacts to increase areas of strength or work to optimize the effects of other cards or one's choice of character. The cards I choose for this category are Motorcycle Jacket, Padded Suit, Motorcycle Helmet, and Numb. As an alternative for Motorcycle Jacket, Padded Suit, and Motorcycle Helmet, depending on character selection, I may also employ Durable, Body Armor, and Medical Professional. However, this will be explained later in the discussion. Motorcycle Jacket grants a 5% increase in damage resistance and 5 units of health. Padded Suit provides 10% damage resistance, 5 units of health, but comes with a stamina efficiency penalty of 20%. Motorcycle Helmet buffs damage resistance by 15%, health by 10 units, but also eliminates aiming down your sights. And lastly, Numb buffs damage resistance by 15% while using temporary health. This card also works in line with Buckshot Bruiser from the related cards. As for the alternatives, Durable increases trauma resistance by 15% and health by 5 units. Body Armor increases trauma resistance by 25%, but reduces ammo capacity by 15%. And Medical Professional allows first aid kits and defibrillators to recover 15 trauma units and grants an extra life. Last in the Synergistic cards, I choose to employ Shredder, Confident Killer, and Marked for Death. Shredder increases damage by 1% for every connected pellet and stacks up to 15% provided that rounds connect within 3 seconds of each other. Confident Killer increases damage by 1% for every mutation killed and also stacks up to 15%, and this lasts for the duration of a given level. Marked for Death increases damage to pinged enemies by 10% for one's team. When stacked together with the compensatory and related cards, the Super 90 can theoretically inflict an additional 70% damage to targets. Our last area of card selection is the preferential cards. These are cards that are completely unrelated to the weapon and its strengths/weaknesses, but are still a useful perk. And this is where the most nuance can take place. Given that we have only one slot left, I choose to give it to Grenade Pouch. Grenade Pouch grants an extra offensive throwable. I usually find it more helpful having more than one offensive throwable. To me, they act as a trump card should chaos or a major threat get out of hand. Now, our last area of discussion is the character choice. Given our card selections for this weapon, it primarily fits with Holly and Doc. Holly's character perks are geared towards stamina and damage resistance. Hence, I chose the damage-resistant cards, Motorcycle Jacket, Motorcycle Helmet, and Padded Vest to compound with her damage resistance, giving her a grand total of 40% damage resistance, not including Numb. Despite the stamina efficiency penalty that comes with padded suit, she gains stamina with each kill, so I'm not too worried about the negative effect. As for Doc, she is more attuned to trauma defense and healing, hence I would give her durable, body armor, and medical professional, giving her team 25% trauma resistance and herself a grand total of 65% trauma resistance. As stated during our review of the Super 90, in order for it to be fully effective, particularly with mutations, one will have to close the distance and risk sustaining damage. The card and character selection are meant to minimize the amount of damage or trauma one takes on while still remaining offensively operational and dependable as a hard hitter. But as I said guys, there's 1,000 ways to build a weapon-centered deck. These were just my preferences. Otherwise though, that concludes the build. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, and in our next video, we'll be reviewing the AK-47 Assault Rifle, and will also include my preferred deck build for said weapon. It's been Londononion, and I will see you guys next time.